You have slain the demon. Its foul corpse lies motionless in front of you. You pat down its clothes, searching for anything of use, until your hand rests upon a hard box. You withdraw your hand, holding what looks like a regular grey box with something inside it. Do you open the box? Yes? You see inside a deck of colourful cards. You feel compelled to draw one. The magics of the cards courses through your body as your fingertips touch the surface. Welcome to the Cackling Jackal. My name is James, and today we're going to be looking at the Deck of Many Things. For anyone who has played any amount of Dungeons & Dragons, that you may be familiar with the Deck of Many Things. It's a notorious item found in the 5th edition DMG, and it's been in, I think, every other edition of the game as well. And it is an item that you draw a card from. You draw a card from the deck, and the card does a thing. And these cards range from being wildly awesome to being wildly bullshit. Which, all's fair in love and war. But I'm going to talk to you about how best to use the Deck of Many Things in your game, if you should at all. Then, after I go through the 5 steps that I've sort of come up with for making and crafting and making your Deck of Many Things worthwhile, then I'm going to show you what I've done with my Deck of Many Things that I have designed for my home campaign called Edge of Civilization. Anyway, without further ado, let's just jump into it. Alright, so the first step to crafting your Deck of Many Things is to ask yourself the question, why are you doing it? There's a few reasons for this, because this item is notorious for a reason. It is game-breaking in every sense of the word. If you're running a campaign in which everything is carefully balanced and everyone has crafted their character to be as efficient as possible, not the item for you. If you've crafted a world where you really care about every single NPC and every king, every queen, and all the politics between those, not necessarily the item for you. If you care about how the balance of life and magic works in your world, and how all these things come together to form a world, and you don't want that to be disrupted, not the thing for you. This is important to know, because this will cause you to not like your world, and if you don't like your world, then your players won't like the world, because these items will do things to the characters. If suddenly your well-balanced character loses a bunch of XP, or maybe your really balanced character gains a bunch of XP, that might not seem that game-breaking. Maybe a character gets an epic magic item that they weren't expecting to get at all, and suddenly they're outputting a whole bunch more damage. If your players care about that balance, maybe not the item for you. Let's talk about why it might be the item for you. First things first, when a character draws from the Deck of Many Things, they get a sense of excitement as to what could possibly come out. Could be good, could be bad. If your characters like that random nature of D&D, go for it. They will love to draw from this deck. If they're going to draw every card from the deck and just keep drawing, maybe not the thing. It should probably... This is more advice to players than it is to DMs, but you should probably try and limit how much you draw from the deck, because you'll just get that much more reward from the deck when you do draw. You'll feel like it has made an impact in the game. It is a legendary item, so if you want to add some higher power, or if you want to, maybe the characters are killing a god or doing something amazing and you want to give them something in return which is just as amazing, this is what you can do. If you want your world, if your world is in constant flux with magics changing it and empires being destroyed and more popping up all the time, this is the item for you. Or at least one of the items. There's plenty of things that can cause chaos in D&D, but the Deck of Many Things is definitely one option you have. What you're looking for with the Deck of Many Things is not, hey, I want to give a well-balanced item to a character, I want them to use it a bunch and all that sort of thing. No. What you're looking for here is if you need an item that you want to just show the raw chaos of the world, if you want to show how powerful magic is in a world where there's not very much magic, you might be able to sneak a Deck of Many Things in there and show your characters and your players how wild the world can be. So those are a few good reasons and a few negative reasons for why you might be wanting to put your deck of many things in the game. Here's the big cautionary tale, I guess, for the deck of many things. If your players are bored, that is not because they don't have enough cool magic items. It's not because they need the deck of many things. It's not because they want more chaos, necessarily. It's because they have an issue with how you're running your game. The game should be rewarding enough, it should be exciting enough, it should be entertaining enough, it should be a whole world of its own without you having to throw in a deck of many things. Boredom is not solved by random rolls or random drawing of cards. In this case, you need to rethink how you're running your game, or potentially you're not running the right game for your players, and you might just might be better off packing up and starting again in a different game, or letting someone else DM, or anything like that. But all I want to say is the deck of many things will not solve your campaign's problems. It will, if anything, only put more problems in. That being said, if your world suits the deck of many things, if your players suit the deck of many things, give it to them. By all means, go for it and give them this chaotic, random bullshit deck. I think that pretty much covers the why you might want to or not want to put in the deck of many things. So let's get on to some more substantial parts of actually making your deck of many things. Okay, the first step, which well, I guess it's technically the second step if asking yourself why is the first step. I think I've got them there somewhere. Will be the steps to making a deck of many things. The second step, once you've decided whether that the deck of many things is going to work in your campaign, the first step is to get a prop. Here is Weave. I got this from the Monocle Society online. It's an amazing game in its own right. If you like storytelling and you like role playing, this is definitely a thing for you. And part of what comes in Weave is a whole tarot deck. And tarot decks are what the deck of many things are based on. So it's a deck that looks like this. And the cards look like this. And these cards are all pretty awesome. Just trying to make sure that you can see them. So there we go. There's some tome. These cards are pretty pretty. They're pretty pretty. I absolutely love the look of them, and as soon as I saw them, I'm like, I could make a deck of many things out of this. And that's basically my second tip. The first part of actually making a deck is to get a prop. Now this prop could be Weave. Go out and buy Weave, you won't regret it. And it has beautiful cards to use for your deck of many things. It doesn't have to be Weave though. It could be just a tarot deck that you found somewhere. You can find some pretty cheap ones around, as long as they've got a variety of things on them. I've seen tarot decks that just have like naked or nearly naked women just on them, and it's like, well, that doesn't really suit D&D. I mean, I guess it could if it works for your world, but there are a number of tarot decks out there. There's the Critical Role one as well. There's a lot of options. Find something that you like and that you are inspired by. You can also just use a deck of cards. If you've got a deck of normal cards, use them. Why not? The Dungeon Master's Guide does give you a way to translate all of the normal playing cards into the deck of many things cards, as far as which one does what effect. If that works for you and your world, go for it. Other than that, you can make your own. And I suggest making your own if you've got a bunch of good ideas. Get some people to throw in some ideas. If you've got any artistic talent, go for it. If you don't have any artistic talent, go for it anyway. And make it your own. Make sure that this deck becomes something that you've crafted and are really, really proud of. And that's the prop itself that you're proud of. We'll get to the effects of the cards soon. And the next thing I suggest is maybe getting a container for the deck of many things, because it's nice to give your players a physical prop. Whether it's a deck of cards and you just give it to them, sure, that's fine. But if I give them this deck of cards, they've seen the deck of cards before, they know what it looks like, they'll go, oh cool, I'm going to draw something off it. If you give them a box, I've just found a simple one that years ago I've had this actually. A simple box you can put them in. That makes a really cool sort of okay, now I'm opening the box and using the item, or I'm opening the pouch. You can make a little leather pouch or a little felt pouch or anything like that. Anything you want to put the cards in, I think just amplifies the deck of many things' impact in the game. As soon as a player physically goes and reaches for the box and decides they're going to open the box and then decides they're going to draw a card, really amps up everyone else and them and the DM's expectations of what's going to happen. So, first step, get a prop. It's the second step. I keep saying it's the first. Second step, get a prop. Get some cards, get a container, boom, you're good to go. In case you are making your own or finding a deck of cards or whatever, the deck of many things uses 22 cards in the big version, and there is little versions that you can find which have 13 cards. So go for it. Okay, so tip number 3, tip trois. Tip number 3 is to change the rules. The deck of many things in the Dungeon Master's Guide has a very specific way of going about things. So you declare a number of cards, you draw that many cards, you do their effects one at a time, etc., etc., etc. Cool, that's the way the Dungeon Master's Guide works the deck of many things. You don't have to work it that way. If you don't like how the character declares 1 to 3 cards before they draw and then draws them, change it. I think I'm a bit of a bigger fan of just draw a card. There you go, done. Draw a card, do the card, and you're good to go. If you don't like how the full card in the deck of many things, what it does, it makes you lose a bunch of XP, which is cool, but it doesn't let you lose more than what your current level's minimum is, which I don't like. I think, hey, if there's a card in the deck that gives you a bunch of XP and can let you level up, why not there be a card that makes you lose a bunch of XP and maybe go down a level? It's not that big a deal. Just change it. And there's a number of cards that you can have issues with. If you have an issue with, just change things. If you don't think it's enough XP that you get, buff it. If you don't think that the magic item that they get from I can't remember the key card gives them a magic item. If you don't think that that's powerful enough, make it a legendary weapon. If you think that it doesn't need to just be a weapon, make it an artifact. Change the deck to suit your world. Make sure, and not only just your world, specifically change the rules of the deck to how you like them, because this is your deck of many things. Do whatever you want with it. It's your world, your rules. I don't think I need to talk too much more about that because it's pretty straightforward, but just don't be afraid to change things. The deck is already wildly unbalanced. You can't really unbalance it further. The fourth step in making your deck, your own deck, is to alter it to the world. So whereas the previous point was alter the rules of the deck to match what you want mechanically speaking, this one is alter the deck to fit in your campaign. If you want to change the key card, if you don't think the key makes sense to draw a weapon, change it. Make it a sword, or make it an axe, or make it whatever the hell you want. If you think it makes sense that a magic item is going to come out of a bush, make the card the bush. Why not? It's your world, go for it. If you think that an effect is too much or too little, or change it. If you think that your world is very chaotic and this card doesn't really fit. So for instance, if you're running a game where everything is crazy, savages are running about, it's all chaos, there's no real political system, it doesn't really make sense for you to draw a card that gives you a castle somewhere. That it could work, but if you don't feel it fits, get rid of it and change it to something else. If your world is really law-bound and really political, maybe change a card to play with that. Maybe if the dwarves rule your world, and you've got a dwarf player, and one of the cards makes one of your players lose the dwarven beard and never be able to regrow it again. Do it. That's not really a massive, powerful magical effect. It's just a thing that happens, but it might have political repercussions in your world. You just want to make sure that everything that your deck of many things does is meaningful to the world. Every single effect. And finally, we get to the 5th step in making your own deck of many things, and that's to make sure that every moment of the deck of many things should be epic and monumental. Every time someone looks it even looks at that deck, it should be an event. Make sure that whenever the party find the deck, it's something awesome. Something awesome happened and you got that deck. Which I think a personal favorite that you should put in your campaign, if you're going to use that deck of many things, is to put it on an enemy, and when that enemy starts losing, have them draw from the deck in desperation. They're fighting the Orc Chief. Of the Orc Chief somewhere, and the Orc Chief decides, hey, you know what, I'm going to draw from the deck of many things, and I'm going to draw the Storm. And what happens, you watch as the Orc's sword that was glowing with fire suddenly disintegrates in its hand. The players will be like, what the hell? The Orc will realize that he made a dumb mistake and probably should have drawn a better card from the deck. And the players are introduced to this deck in an interesting way. Maybe something good happens to the Orc. Maybe the Orc gets an ally who charges in, and then suddenly that fight becomes a lot more weird, but a lot more interesting as well, and gives them a bit of a run-up towards actually getting the deck themselves. So that's when the party finds the deck, make it epic. When the party uses the deck, make it epic as well. And how I have done this with my game is all of these cards have beautiful pictures on them. They have wonderful pictures on them. And if someone draws the coin card from my game, for instance, if someone draws the coin card from my game, then I have given every card in this deck a description of what happens to the players. For instance, when they draw the coin card, the card fades in their hand, leaving behind a heavy metal coin that they feel compelled to flip. That doesn't tell you anything about what the card mechanically does, because what the coin card in my world does is give or take XP. That doesn't tell them what it does, but it gives them a nice sort of, this item is magical. This item is not only, doing something in their hand without any other interference, it's creating a coin in their hand that they are suddenly compelled and need to flip. And that's what I've done with every card. I've given it a flavor description of what happens before I've given the mechanical effect of what happens. And I'll show you that when we get to it should actually be very soon, when we get to my deck of many things. Something that the DM should consider is when they lose the deck of many things. What happens when they lose it? With my world, I've said that every card, or not quite every card, there's the coin card, I think it is actually, doesn't disappear when it's used. It just goes back in the deck randomly. But every other card gets taken from the deck as it's used. And that is pretty cool, in my opinion. But if that deck is entirely gone, what happens then? Well, in my world, the deck goes somewhere else. It just appears somewhere, maybe in a vault, maybe in the big bad's treasure. Maybe it's given to a random peasant. It just appears in his pocket, and then he starts using it and becoming some crazy, wonderful person in the world. Alternatively, as a DM, you should think about how else they can lose it. Maybe a thief steals it in the middle of the night, and then they hear about these weird magical effects happening in the world. And then one of them goes to check their bags and go, hey, I don't have a deck of many things anymore. What happened? And then someone makes a connection that, oh, that thief must have taken it. And then they go and they start tracking down the thief, and the thief got killed by someone. And you find out that it was the orc that killed him. So now you have to go visit the orc. And so there's this big side quest about what the hell happened to the deck of many things. And make everything a moment. This deck, not this deck specifically, because this is just a prop, but the deck of many things is an amazing item. It's a legendary, epic, magical item, and it needs to have an impact on the game every time it's important. Every time it comes up, it needs to be a thing of note. It needs to be a moment that people remember. It deserves it. Come on, it's amazing. Alright, so that is my 5 tips on how to make your deck of many things your own. I hope that's been helpful. But now we're going to move on to what I like to call the Jackal's deck of many things. So let me just click onto this. Lovely. So the Jackal's deck of many things is a PDF that I have made using the weave cards that you've seen throughout the episode. And it's a deck of many things that I really like. First of all, this PDF will be available at some point. If it's available in the description, go check now. It might be, it might not. We might very soon have it up on the DM's Guild, but it might not be there quite yet. Just check. The description will tell you where it is. And if it's not there yet, we will do just a quick announcement to let you guys know when it is available. So, first things first, let's talk about how the deck works. So, my deck of many things, the Jackal's deck of many things, comes in a box, small box about the size of a tarot deck. As an action, the player can declare a number from 1 to 3. They then draw that many cards, resolving the effect of each card before moving on to the next. If a card makes the user unable to draw a card while it still has cards to draw, it doesn't draw anymore. Otherwise, there is no way to avoid drawing the number of cards you declared. When drawn, the cards fade from existence, except the coin, which fades back into a random point in the deck. When the last card is drawn, the deck reappears in any part of the world of the DM's choosing. So, if this part I've included the 1 to 3, if I was to run it in Edge of Civ right now, I don't know whether I'd include the declare part, or whether I'd just say, hey, just draw one card, and then after that you can draw another card. But this is similar to how it's done in the deck in the Dungeon Master's Guide. When drawn, the cards fade from existence, except the coin, which fades to a random point. That's all me. I've changed that because I think that is more fun. And that each card can sort of only be drawn once, but the deck will always continue to exist because of its internal magic. I think that is awesome. Cool, and then I'm talking about a card effect. So each card you can see down here has italicized text, and it's got bold text. The italicized text, that's hard to say that 50 times quickly. The italicized text, the italicized text is to be read out to the player who drew the card. So it's the flavor text. It doesn't actually do anything. It's just sort of describing what the card does. Does visually. And sensory, I guess, because there's more than just visuals in there. The bold text, however, lists the effect of the card. So let's start with the architect. Now, many of these cards are inspired from the Dungeon Master's Guide. Some of them are exactly the same as the Dungeon Master's Guide. Some of them are very vaguely sort of maybe, close to some of the cards from the Dungeon Master's Guide, and some of the cards are completely new. I think all up, I only had a few, maybe 4 or something, that were exactly or nearly the same as the deck of many things from the Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition. Everything else here is sort of kind of me. So, let's start. The Architect card. Architect card looks like this. And how I've designed it is the card lifts from your hand, hovering just below eye level. It begins spinning, rotating faster and faster. You begin to lose your balance as you, too, feel like your world is spinning. A flash of arcane blue light passes over you, and you feel nothing. You feel trapped. Now, I'm not going to claim that I'm the best writer. I'm not the best writer. I'm not even a good writer. But I like how that sounds. I like that the card does something, and then the effect is that you are teleported to a labyrinthine demiplane, in which time seems to never pass. You are entombed in a sphere floating within a massive dungeon in suspended animation. Everything you are wearing or carrying stays behind. You cannot be located by any divination magic, but a wish spell can reveal your location. So that's an effect there. I don't go into too much detail. I don't say exactly what spells can reveal your location or anything like that. Well, it does say that only a wish spell can reveal your location. But it doesn't say which demiplane. It doesn't say anything about that. That's up to the DM to come up with. There's enough room here for the DM to sort of do whatever they want with the card and whatever makes thematic sense. That card is very similar to a card from the Dungeon Master's Guide. Alternatively, let's go to a card that is similar to one from the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Assassin card, which looks like this. Now, this is like the Rogue card in the deck of many things. But I've gotten the visuals here, because the player will be drawing this card, they'll be looking at it, and then something will happen. So what's happening is they draw the card, then what they're going to do is examine the fine dagger on the card. As you do so, a shadowy figure coalesces from the card on the ground in front of you. There is something familiar about this shadow person, something you can't quite put your finger on. It reaches out towards you with a swirling black hand, reaches into the card, and pulls out the dagger. The card vanishes from your hand as the shadow lashes out with the dagger, only to also vanish at the last moment. So, this is an NPC who you are close to, now possesses the dagger, and has the sole purpose of killing you. Awesome. So this is an NPC who's close to you, so a friendly, or an ally, or your character's wife, or anyone, an NPC that the DM chooses, who you are close to, now possesses this dagger. And this is a dagger of humanoid slaying, using the same magical properties as the arrow of slaying, whose magic properties only work against you. Once it's dealt its extra damage, it becomes a non-magical dagger. Nothing except the wish spell or divine intervention can end this effect. Heavily inspired by the rogue card, the rogue card causes someone to sort of turn on you. This one just sort of adds in the fact that they get a dagger of humanoid slaying against you. And I think that's really awesome. It means... It doesn't just mean that someone turns on you, it also means that they have an item on them that can sort of tell you that they've turned on them. Maybe you see this NPC, and just as you're about to go hug them, you notice they've got this fine dagger that you've seen before on their belt. And then suddenly you turn around and go, holy fuck no, and decide that you're going to attack them first, or, you're going to deal with it. It's more interesting than just someone turns on you. And I think a lot of the things in this deck that are inspired by the deck of many things are just, hey, this is more interesting. Here's the coin card. This is inspired by the Fool and the Jester card. In the deck of many things, the Fool card takes XP and the Jester card gives it. I've upped the XP values because this deck of many things is aimed around levels 8 to 12 is when they'll get them. So I sort of buffed up the XP then, and I've also said it can make you lose no more than one level. And yeah, I mentioned that earlier in the video. Let's go. I'm just going to pick out some of my favorite cards. We've got the Crown here. So this is a card that causes you to become the last member of a noble or royal family. Somewhere in the world, people will recognize you as the member. Blah 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 blah. You get a keep or land. The castle keep is currently overrun by monsters that you need to be removed. And you gain proficiency in the persuasion skill. This is heavily inspired by a card, slightly modified, but heavily inspired. The Dawn gives you a bunch of money in the form of jewelry and gems. The Dusk card, however, which those cards I should be showing these as I go. So here is the Dawn card and the Dusk card. If the Dawn card gives you a bunch of money, the Dusk card should take a bunch of money. In fact, it takes every form of wealth on your person, excluding magical items. But that includes coins, gems, and everything else. And you also lose all titles to lands and deeds and businesses and everything else. You become poor. You become a beggar, essentially. It's up to the DM how far this extends. Like, do you also lose equipments? I would say no. But again, I'm leaving it open for the DM to sort of determine. The Gallows is a card that's cool. I really love this. It's taken right from the deck of many things. I think it's the Skull card in the deck of many things. It basically summons an Avatar of Death, which has a stat block in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and it fights you. If anyone else tries to help you in the fight, they summon their own Avatar of Death. So it's pretty cool. I think it's a lot of fun. Cool. The Gateway I'm also cool with. One thing you might notice with this deck is that there are a few things I've changed. I've removed some of the just, hey, you are stuck here, goodbye. Kind of like the Architect card, but I removed some other ones. And I've added some that affect the world rather than the player directly. And I think that's a lot of fun, because it means that this item not only is a thing that this character has, it's a thing that this world has, and is affected by. So for instance, the Gateway card here. The Gateway, basically, what it does is it springs a portal in front of you to a random plane, which you can see I've got a list here: Astral, Air, Earth, Fire, Water, Feywild, Shadowfell, and 9 Hells. It's a permanent portal and cannot be removed except by a wish spell, and the specific destination of the portal is up to the DM. In other words, where you land on the plane of elemental fire is up to the DM. Could be the City of Brass, or whatever they call it. Or it could be just the middle of nowhere. But this is cool because this portal exists. Whether the characters decide to go through it or not, it exists. And it will always exist unless really powerful magic removes it. I think this is really awesome because it doesn't say whether this is a one-way or a two-way portal. That's up to the DM, although I would assume it was a two-way portal. I'd use it as a two-way portal as well, meaning that maybe the characters go, well, hey, I don't feel like going to the 9 Hells right now, but there's a typo there as well, I just noticed. I don't feel like going to the 9 Hells right now, and then they forget about it, they just leave it be, and then devils start coming out of nowhere and raiding villages and things like that, and shit goes tits up. I think it's a lot of fun, the gateway card. The Herald basically summons a knight to be your to be in your allegiance. He's a fighter, level 4 fighter. Inferno is cool as well. It basically makes a devil is now your mortal enemy. What does that mean? Up to the DM. The Mask is one I came up with myself. Basically, what this card does is everyone you have ever met, except those that are currently with you, suddenly forget who you are and that you ever existed. And I think that is really, really awesome. It doesn't kill the player. It doesn't change their stats. It doesn't give them XP. It doesn't take XP. It doesn't do anything like that, but it just makes everyone forget you. This card, I could see a lot of people not liking this card because, well, not liking it, but thinking it's a bad card to draw. But I could definitely think of some people, especially one character in my campaign, who wouldn't mind everyone just forgetting they existed because they are a notorious criminal type person. But then there's also the emotional side of things, and I think that is an interesting moment. It's very heavy on the DM and the player to roleplay those sorts of encounters, but I think it's really cool. The Mountain is one card that I really love. You also see it's a very similar one is the Tortoise. And what they do is they change a character's race. I really love this effect, which is why I've got 2 cards in the deck that do it. You don't need to have 2 cards, but the Mountain and the Tortoise. So, they look like that. And what they do is, you roll a d6 and it changes your race. That's all it does. And the Mountain cards are very Underdark sort of inspired. So we've got Bugbears, Drow, Duergar, Earth Genasi, Goliath, and Svirfneblin, otherwise known as Dark Gnomes, is what they're called. Yeah. And they are all... and the transformation takes a week, which I like the fact that it takes a week because it means the DM can do things like, oh, hey, you drew the card, you feel slightly different. The character goes, okay, what the hell happened? And then you just go... I love doing that as a DM. My favorite expression is just to go, I don't know. But maybe they start getting or losing dark vision. Over the course of the week, things sort of start changing. And, I don't necessarily think you go to the minute detail of changing their character sheet, every little change that happens, but sort of just describing it. So maybe someone who was an elf, but is now turning into an Earth Genasi. I don't think Earth Genasi have dark vision, but maybe they start, they go to peer into a dark cave, and they're used to being able to see in dark vision. And then you suddenly say, your dark vision isn't giving you as much detail as it normally does. And the player goes, why is that? That's really weird. It says right here, dark vision, I can see in dark. And you go, I love it. I love the fact that the changes take place over a month. Over a week, sorry. So those are the Underdark races for the Mountain card, and then the Tortoise races, we've got some seafaring races. So we've got things like the Kuatoa, Sahuagin, Sea Elf, the Turtle, the Triton, and the Water Genasi. Most of these races are found in some of the D&D books or material, but 4 of them are in Appendix A. You can see here we've got the races in Appendix A: Duergar, Kuatoa, Sahuagin, Sea Elf. These are races that you can use in your own game. You don't need to use them just for the Dungeon Master, not the Dungeon Master's Guide. You don't need to just use them for the deck of many things. You can use them as starting races if you want. I'm not claiming that these are balanced at all. They're not designed to be balanced. Okay, they've got balance kept in mind, but it's not like, oh, this is the most balanced thing ever because it's the deck of many things and who cares. Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with those. The owl is another one. And okay, the owl is an interesting one. This is a lot of text. You can see right here, all this bold text is for the owl. It really means something really simple. All it means is if you are a spellcaster, you forget some spells that you know and have prepared, and you get ones to replace them from a random table. If you're not a spellcaster, you just get 3 spells that you can use once a day. And the table for those spells is down here, Appendix B. So these are they're all vaguely based around owls or birds or of some description. So you've got things like alarm, beast bond, comprehend languages, true seeing, windwalk, invisibility, animal shapes, conjure animals, fly, haste, wish, foresight, arcane eye, control winds, scrying. Now, for some classes, this is going to be a negative card to their character, because why would you swap out a spell that you've chosen for a spell that you're not going to choose? But for classes that don't get a wide variety of spells, a lot of those spells they may never have the option of getting other than through this card, which I think is really cool. Suddenly you have a druid who can cast a spell that usually only wizards can cast. Let's skip a few, because River is cool. You get to just avoid or erase one moment in your life. The Stag allows you... The Stag is... I love the Stag. If you don't know me, I despise characters going for highly optimized builds. And that's why I can include cards like the Mountain, like the Tortoise, which change their races and make them unoptimized. And I can include a card like the Stag, which the Stag is a good card, don't get me wrong. A character who draws the Stag is going to be more powerful than if they hadn't chosen the Stag. Because what happens is they gain exactly enough XP to level up. Exactly enough XP. However, that new level that you take must be a level in Druid, ignoring all multi-classing requirements for this level and any further Druid levels taken. That's awesome. That is amazing. First of all, if you are already a Druid, that's just good. That's just flat out great. If you're not a Druid, suddenly you have powers that you'd never even considered multi-classing in before. Suddenly you can cast cantrips. Suddenly you know, if you put one more level into Druid, and it says you ignore multi-classing requirements, so that means, you know, if you don't have the wisdom for Druid, don't worry, you don't need it. So if you take a second level in Druid, you can wild shape. And that might be something that your character has never thought about before, but might now. And I just think that's awesome. The Storm crumbles all your cards to dust. The Tome increases your intelligence. The Wanderer is essentially what the key card was. And the Wanderer looks something like this. And I'll actually read the flavor text for the Wanderer. As you examine the card in front of you, the folds in the long cloak begin to shift. The old man amongst the robes turns to face you, keeping his face hidden in shadow. His lips move and you hear a raspy voice say, "This world has held me for too long. It is time for me to pass on my legacy." He draws from his cloak a beautiful-looking weapon, and seems to pass it through the card to you. As you take it, you feel the magic of the weapon coursing through you. You turn your gaze back to the card. The cloaked man is gone, and the card disintegrates in your hand. Cool, that is an awesome flavor text if I do say so myself. I love it. And what does the card do? It gives you a very rare magic weapon with which you are proficient, chosen by the DM. In the Dungeon Master's Guide, when you look up what the key card does, this is what it says. It says, you gain a very rare magic weapon with which you are proficient, chosen by the DM. That's not interesting enough for me. That is not an epic card. That is not a amazing, hey, this card, this deck is magical and powerful. Here's what I really like about this, and what I think you should take into making your own deck, is cards need to be interesting. They need to be different. They need to be just not, here's an effect. Whether that becomes you writing these long flavor texts, or whether it just means that, you know, you do something like this, where suddenly this weapon that this old man gave you, first of all, did that old man exist in the real world? Is he someone who got trapped in the cards? Is he someone who exists somewhere? That's a question. And suddenly this weapon that you had, which, you know, it might be an awesome weapon. It might be, you know, it might be a really epic flaming sword. I don't know. That's awesome. But now it's a really epic flaming sword that some dude gave you from a card. That is really cool. And it means the sword has a story. It gives hooks if the DM wants to do something about it. But it just makes everything more interesting. And that is really cool in my eyes. The Watchtower ages you and reduces your constitution. And the Woods card is another card that just affects the world around you. So this just creates a 2-mile radius forest that grows in the course of a day. This card might seem a bit meh. I've also said at the end of the 24-hour period, a powerful Fey being makes the forest its lair and realm, which means if you're still in there 24 hours later, you might get attacked by some epic, crazy, tricksy forest being. It also means this makes you think about where someone draws the card. So if suddenly someone draws this card in the middle of a city, and a forest just sprouts up over the course of the next 24 hours, what? It impacts the world, and my world is crazy, so I've made crazy cards that make the world crazier. If someone draws this on a boat, suddenly an island pops up that's just this dense forest Fey island. If someone's in the middle of the desert and draws this card, suddenly that happens. Maybe someone's drawn this card before. Maybe they have. In which case, there is a big 2-mile forest, Fey-inhabited forest somewhere in the world. I think this card is awesome because it creates hooks, it creates adventures, it creates interesting things. Awesome. I think I actually went through most, if not all, of the cards then. The races here I'm not going to go into too much detail on, but, you know, they're based on their monster manual things. The Kuato are tricky. This slimy hide ability is annoying to word, to say the least. So Hyugen are cool. They have a really cool swim speed. They can talk to sharks. Really, really awesome. So, I hope you've learned something. This video is probably a little bit long, but the Deck of Many Things is a really powerful magic item that you should definitely consider using in your game. It is awesome. This PDF will be available to download, if not now, at some point. Check the description for details on that. And other than that, I hope to see you guys very soon. Until then, I've been James, this has been the Cackling Jackal, and this has been the Jackal's Deck of Many Things. We'll see you later.